Yeah, and I think that, I mean, sometimes there's confusion. We use the word leadership a lot, and it's not to say that management isn't important, or that that systems aren't important, or operations don't matter. Execution and implementation. But it's to say that there's a lot of emphasis that's often placed on the mechanical parts. I think it was Drucker who said something that said something like leaders do the right things and managers do things right. Something like leadership's about doing the right thing, and management's about doing things right.
Right.
I think that it's to simply say that we need to emphasize that leadership is that part that is about change and transformation. It's about holding higher standards. In the same way we want a business to have a deeper and higher sense of purpose than just making money, we certainly expect leaders to have that and embody that higher sense of purpose. That is, as a human being, that higher sense of purpose than just simply, I'm there for the economics, I'm here for the money, I'm here for how much I'm getting paid. That's a pretty uninspiring leader.
Right. One of our listeners asked a question. Doug, can you repeat that Rhodes quote so she can write it down? That leaders drive culture.
Yeah,
can you repeat that again?
It was Ann Rhodes, who's she was with Southwest Airlines for a long time on the board, and then was co-founder of JetBlue. And I'm paraphrasing it a wee bit, but I think it's very close. It says, "Leaders drive culture. Culture drives behaviors. Behavior drives performance, and performance drives results."
Right on. And for our listeners, we have a few more minutes. If any of you have any questions, I'm going to take a question from Malcolm here for you, Doug. His question is, creating conscious cultures, just lost it here for a sec, hold on. Creating conscious cultures from startups seems to be an easier task than converting a low freedom culture into a high freedom culture from maybe an existing company. So what do you see as the keys for leaders who seek to change entrenched low consciousness, low cultures, companies that are experiencing that? Any words of wisdom for our audience on how to actually instigate some change that way?
Yeah, by the way, Michael, I think you're absolutely right. It is, you might as well be great from the start. It's always easier to start off that way than to turn a battleship in a bathtub. However, having said that, I am an optimist. I think conscious capitalism, by definition, is optimistic as compared to pessimistic. It's about the optimism of human nature. It's about the optimism that we have a bright, not a dark future, and that any organization, no matter where you are, can make strides. It's sort of, I guess an analogy would be that, hey, if you're young and fit, certainly running a mile is a lot easier than if you're a couch potato in your 60s. It's like, yeah, you are absolutely right. But that doesn't mean the couch potato in their 60s couldn't run a mile. It means you're going to have to take a little more time, a little more patience, and have a plan to slowly work your way there. And I think in the same way that we would say that, that as people that are out of shape have to work their way into fitness, that organizations that are, quote, out of shape from a conscious capitalism standpoint can be worked into shape, but you have to do it slowly. You have to do it thoughtfully and mindfully. You can't, as again, put a conscious capitalism strategy on top of a culture that isn't, or it'll get a rejection right away. You've got to slowly bring that culture around, and I do believe it can be done, and I think it has been done, where you can inspire people to a little higher standard, to care more about things than just the economic exchange. And in that process, you slowly start walking down that path toward a higher sense of purpose, toward a stakeholder model, toward cultures that are about trust and care. And there's a lot of ways you can do this through a lot of assessments. We don't have time for that right now. But I think the point is, one, I do think it can be done. Second is, I don't think it can be done overnight. There's no silver bullet. There's no magical thinking about it. Any more than overnight, if you're out of shape, you can go run a marathon tomorrow. But it doesn't mean that for most people, you couldn't run a marathon. It just means you have to put the effort in and work hard.
So true, so true. So Doug, just for a few minutes, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, think back in your own evolution as a leader, because I think really we're sticking with the leadership component for just a sec. Any realization at some point in your past when you realized that you were behaving maybe in a more unconscious way, and what triggered a shift for you in your own personal journey? Just give us a little insight, so maybe that might help some of our listeners on that, on what they may have to do or look for themselves.
Yeah, well, my personal story is obviously that. It's not everybody else's, but as they say, I'm a unique individual just like everyone else. So there probably are things that are pretty common. For instance, I tend to be a controlaholic. I tend to want to have things done perfectly, or have it, have a sense of control, because frankly, I think it reduces my anxiety when things are out of control. And I've had to learn, and matter of fact, the Harvard Business Review failure edition, when the article they did on me had to do with how, in my mind, I almost destroyed Trader Joe's when I brought back to the East by micromanaging the team too long, not knowing when to let go and let them make their own mistakes, let them kind of grow up, and learn through their own mistakes, but make sure they're the appropriate level of mistakes. And because at the time, I knew more than they did. I knew more about the buying philosophy, about the business, about the way we should doing things. So in a way, I was justified that, I know more. I should be the one making the decisions here. But it turns out you can't do that. You hold a company back. You hold back the growth of the individuals. And so for me as a leader, it was a real aha moment to recognize that it wasn't the results that mattered as much as the people. And that if I was really looking at growing people, which is a longer-term point of view, it may take a quarter or two to get the full results of that. That's okay. You're investing in it, but that it's worth it because it pays dividends, immense dividends later on. For all the reasons we've talked about, that you get to leverage yourself, you get a much stronger organization, and it really is the way in which you'd rather work for an organization that values other people, treats them, gives them freedom, etc. So for me personally, it was that walk over all the right justifications for, in my mind, why it was I needed to have more control and kind of micromanage, to recognizing that actually on face of things looks like it's the right thing, but actually it's the wrong thing in instances. And that the smart move was for me to focus on developing people, training, educating, working with them closely, and then letting them, trusting them to go off and make their learnings and also then make their mark. And I got to say, it paid dividends. Trader Joe's soared, and I got to relax a little bit more. It was driving me nuts trying to micromanage everybody.
That always pays a price. And I think that what you just said was beautiful, because that's really the key. We have these aha moments. The question is, are we paying attention to them or not? Or are we still stuck in our own old way of control or our own needs to get things done our way? So that's always the challenge of the leader. But let me ask one last question. We only have maybe 2 more minutes left. What one piece of advice, Doug, or inspiration do you have to offer our audience today that would help spur action? We can talk about CC and all these wonderful things, and there's a lot of companies. It's a huge movement out there, so I really encourage our audience to check it out if they haven't already. But action is really at the order of the day. So what inspiration or piece of advice could you give our audience that would most resonate, you think, with what they need to hear to take a next step forward along being a more conscious person, a more conscious leader, and having a more conscious business?
Well, that's quite a mouthful.
What's the most important thing?
Yeah.
What's the most important thing?
Well, I think the first and most important thing is you yourself. Be as conscious as you can be. And then be congruent and be honest and be fearless in examining your own self and in your own business on where it is that you're sideways with those values. And that, to dare greatly. Life's too short to live in fear and to be timid. Very few great things ever come out of mediocrity. And I think that to not that I'm for. By the way, I'm not advocating everybody just jump off the abyss and hope the parachute opens. I'm saying that if you start with yourself and you really look hard at, and be authentic to what is it I really want, what is it I really value, and then look at, well, am I also then acknowledging that other people like me would want and value the same thing? Is my business really, purpose-driven? And do I, in my policies, do I do that? In the way I interact, with my investors or my supply chain, do I create value, or do I try to extract value? So I think that the first is just to really assess deeply and honestly, where am I and where is my business? And I think from that awareness, right decisions will come.
Wow, beautifully said, Doug, and really, really want to acknowledge you and your role. You've been one of the co-founders of the Conscious Capitalism Movement International. He's been CEO, and now he's co-CEO of the Conscious Capitalism International Movement. And really, really, truly want to acknowledge you and thank you for all of your hard work and your dedicated effort, and just even in taking the time today just to keep spreading the word. And appreciate your insights and your wisdom, Doug. So thank you for all of that.
Hey, Kevin, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity today. It's an honor.
Appreciate it. So, all right, gang, I'm going to turn it back over to Maureen, who's going to close us up. And again, to our audience, thank you all for listening. Appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you to both Doug and Kevin. It's always such a pleasure to hear from Doug's personal experiences, and Kevin, thank you so much for guiding us so beautifully. I just want to take a few moments just to thank each of the chapters that were involved in today's webinar with Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, and Arizona. We all share a common interest in activating conscious capitalism in our communities. And on the screen, you'll see the websites of each of our chapters, and we really invite you to explore your local chapter and consider joining us as members. And I also want to just note that the website for San Diego is ccsandiego.org, and Los Angeles is consciouscapitalismla.org. So we're sorry for that error. And we will really, you as members really are our lifeline. So we encourage you to connect with us through our Facebook, our Twitter, and our LinkedIn, and LA even has an Instagram. So, through your support, we can continue to grow the conscious capitalism movement here in our local communities. And each chapter provides its own unique events and programming and networking. And this is actually one of the things we're hoping to bring more to you, is these type of educational webinars, so that people can really have a chance to take the deeper dive that they may not be able to with their individual events. So we hope you have found it valuable. We're also recording this webinar, so we will be sharing that with our members, and they will be available through the individual websites of the different chapters. And we'll continue bringing you current topics and guest speakers around issues to do with conscious capitalism. And finally, I want to give a big thank you to our host sponsor today, Maestro Conference, who has really provided us this beautiful platform to bring you this webinar. And we look forward to utilizing some of their other tools that include breakouts, and continue to see how we can really make this a valuable and useful experience to you all. And we hope that you can, if you have any comments or recommendations, please let us know so we can make this experience better for each of you. And if you have any interest in hosting or sponsoring a future webinar, you can reach out directly to me at maureen@ccla.la. And finally, I just want to say a big thank you to everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking your lunchtime hour and sharing it with us, and we look forward to seeing you on the next. Thanks, everybody.